Hey, what's up guys? Back again for part 3 of this drawing. So far, it's been kind of a struggle. I've done a little bit off camera. I started recording, felt like I wasn't really talking, so I stopped, and I'm going to start again. I'm going to try to actually have something to talk about in mind rather than just kind of watching me very, very slowly draw hands. Alright, so in the last videos, I started talking a little bit about inspirations. I very briefly touched upon art education and what that whole experience is like. I definitely want to talk about my art education experience a little bit more in depth. Maybe not in this video so much, maybe in a future video where I can talk about that at length. But overall, it was such a mixed bag experience. I would say mostly positive, but it's such a different experience depending on where you go, who you are, what kind of artwork you want to do, what your attitude is like, how well you are at schooling, or how much you enjoy, the school model of, doing homework, doing assignments, blah blah blah, like that whole thing. It really depends on the individual. I've never really been totally into school as like a thing. Definitely glad to not be doing school anymore. But I don't know, like I said in the previous video, if you've watched that, if you haven't, please do. The part 1 of this and the part 2 of this. I don't know if I talked about education in part 2 at all, but in part 1 at least I briefly mentioned that in art school there's kind of like a set of do's and don'ts, and it's all kind of, you realize at some point that it's kind of the professor's opinion, and like, yeah, they're artists, or they're trained in this and they're good. I'm not saying that they're not, but it is technically opinion. And they're, just as professional people who have different opinions and are just as good in their own way. So it was a little bit, when you have these revelations after revelations of like, oh, I've been doing this wrong, and then, well, that teacher, said one thing, and then the next teacher says the other thing, and you just kind of have to find out for yourself what feels right for you and what feels wrong. So, for instance, let me think of a good example. I'll use anime as an example because that's kind of a hot topic in art colleges that have illustration departments or animation departments or new media. Anything where those, people who have that as an interest may congregate. And a lot of illustrators come from, the nerdy anime, anime club, otaku type. I don't mean to say that in any offensive way, just as a term, because there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with anime, which should be fairly evident because it's very obvious that I take inspirations from anime, and that was one of the first things that got me into drawing. I'm kind of talking in circles, but the point I'm going to try to make in this topic is that in my art college that I went to, and this is not the case in every art college, please do not think that it is, because I've definitely heard the opposite of this story being true. In my college, it was very fine art based, and there were a lot of other departments in the college. It was not a illustration or an animation only college, so that made the dynamic a little bit different to start with. And anime was kind of looked down upon, I think, by a lot of professors. Maybe not necessarily the professors in the illustration department, because they actually were very open-minded and very, polite in, how they addressed people's personal tastes or personal styles. They were very respectful of that. But there was an instance, someone who was a year ahead of me did anime, and she had to deal with a lot of backlash from professors outside of her department, which you do have to cross-pollinate a couple different times for different classes, and you are, sharing your work or sharing your whatever, your projects and stuff with people who are maybe they're painting majors or sculptor majors or ceramics majors, and even other illustration majors, and maybe they just think that anime is bad, or it's immature, or all the different stigmas that come with it, which I think a lot of people already know about. Lost my thought process a little bit, but so this person was doing anime when they first arrived at college, and it's something they had been doing throughout high school. And they had to kind of deal with some flack and some disrespect, and that was really unfortunate to me, because that's something that, they have to deal with that's like a negative in their experience of learning. And I don't think that that's fair, because even if you are somebody who is, you're young, and you started out drawing because of anime, which is kind of my case. I actually started drawing because of video games, and as you all know, a lot of video games come from Japan, made in Japan, and they have anime elements, and so that's when I really started getting into drawing, and I was taking inspiration from video game characters and from anime. But anyway, to get back on topic, it just is really unfortunate when, just because of your interests or your style, you have to deal with discrimination for that. But to jump to another story, there was that girl. We also had a girl who did furry art, and she pretty much got driven out of the school for it. Or at least that's how she felt. She felt like people didn't like her, didn't respect her, and, whether you like it or not, whether you're a fan of that kind of artwork or that kind of subject matter or not, at least show people respect for what they like and what they have a passion for. No one needs to be driven out of town because of what they like to draw. It doesn't matter. If you don't like it, don't look at it, and don't comment on it. You don't have to give people crap. If they're drawing something poorly, if their craft can be worked on, then give people polite advice in a direction that helps them get better. You don't have to be like, oh, you're drawing that, oh, you're drawing really bad anime, or oh, you're whatever. You don't have to be that way about it. I don't know why I'm not talking to you specifically, viewer, but just in general, people need to be a little bit more kind to each other. But anyway, I'm trying to segue into a story. When I first went to this college, I was giving tours, and I was a freshman. And during one of these tours, we were specifically touring or giving a tour to art teachers, high school art teachers. And I'll never forget this. This was one of the few times I've actually, been so wound up that I was shaking. But this one woman, we got to the illustration department, which was obviously my department, and I have a lot of pride for my illustration people and people who illustrate in general. I don't know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give her, one of those open mouth shirts or whatever. I don't even know if this is how they work or not, but I'm just going with it, because these two eyes here, kind of wanted there to be a second face going on that's kind of disconcerting. So I'm just putting a mouth on her, I guess. Anyway, so I was giving this tour to these high school art teachers, and most of them were very respectful and, your typical art teacher, very nice. And this one older woman, that's all I remember about her really, was that she was old. And we got into the illustration department, and she immediately piped in and said something along the lines of like, what do I do about the people who draw anime? Like it was like a curse on her life. And I was like taken a little bit aback by it because it was so out of left field. And being somebody who started drawing through anime at a very young age, in like middle school, and oh yeah, it was bad. You know, like I feel like a lot of illustrators start out drawing bad at anime, or just trying to draw anime. Not that anime is bad, but just trying to draw anime and being too young to be good, you know? So, yeah, she just asked me, like, what do I do about the kids who are drawing anime? Like, how can I beat it out of them, basically, is what she was asking me. And I just looked at her and I was like, I don't think I probably responded as good as I could have in the heat of the moment, because I was so surprised by the question. But I just told her, like, you know what? I hear you. I know why you're upset. Because, you know, a lot of older people, or maybe even, you know, just people in general, you know, you either like anime or you hate it, or you're like, whatever, don't care. And to a lot of people who have never been exposed to it, it just doesn't seem right. It just seems, you know, like it's bad. You've got young people drawing anime, and like, what is this even? Like, what am I looking at? And I totally understand that. But, like, let people do that. Like, let people go through that stage. Let young people experiment. At least it's getting them drawing. You know, that should be something worth celebrating, I think. If there's any form of media that inspires a kid, you know, a high school kid or a middle school kid or younger, to just pick up a pencil and start drawing characters, pick up a pencil and, you know, draw weapons or whatever they're into, that's a starting point that they otherwise wouldn't have. You know, nothing else was inspiring them to do it until, you know, maybe they started playing games and they wanted to draw a character, or maybe they started watching some show and they wanted to do fan art. You know, and that's going to segue. I'm going to talk about fan art probably either in this video or in another video, because fan art is super important. I don't draw a lot of fan art personally. I never really have, but I know a lot of people who do, and I respect a lot of people who do. And really good illustrators do fan art. I think Jake Parker, I don't know if you guys know who that is. He's an illustrator, children's book writer, and illustrator, and he has a series on YouTube as well. He has a YouTube channel. You can look him up, Jake Parker. And then I think if you were to just do like Jake Parker fan art or something like that, it'll come up with, you can find a video where he talks about fan art, and I totally agree with his statements on fan art. I haven't watched it in a while, but he basically says, like, that it's good, that it's good to do. I mean, anything that gets you drawing is good. And that's kind of what I tried to tell that art teacher woman, was just, you know, they're drawing, you know, let them go through that phase. I think I said something along the lines of, like, a lot of the times people who start drawing anime or start drawing from shows or video games or whatever, like, they're probably going to become illustrators, so nurture that. You know, don't tell them no. Don't tell them, like, oh, what you're drawing is crap, because that's going to make them stop. Especially at that young, vulnerable age where, like, you're worried about what everyone thinks of you and you take everything so seriously and, you know, your emotions are running really high. If someone tells you what you're drawing is stupid or crap or, you know, not right in some way, you're going to probably stop. And that's, you know, not the point of an art teacher, I believe. So I just told her to be patient with it. Try to be understanding that that's like a stepping stone for a lot of people, and those people don't necessarily go on to do anime their entire life. Like, a lot of the times, and even like, fellow students and peers and everything, like they started with anime, or they were still doing it, and they might have grown out of it, or developed it into something else. Oh, that's really creepy. I just looked at it in the monitor, and this is not okay, but it's okay. Sometimes they have started with anime and then they move on to do like other cartooning or more Western style cartooning, or whatever. And even if you stay doing anime style your entire life, or if you can tell that person's influenced by anime, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. You don't have to be Japanese. You don't, obviously, but yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say with that whole story is don't ever be ashamed of what you're interested in. Don't be ashamed of like the styles that you are drawn to, or the artists that you genuinely like. If there's anything that inspires you to like pick up a pencil and start drawing, or if you have children and you notice that they're drawing anime, or if you're young and still in school and you love anime or cartoons, even like your Cartoon Network cartoons, if you're drawing Steven Universe characters, or if you're drawing Gumball characters, or whatever you're into, it doesn't matter. Embrace that and let it be your sources of inspiration, because down the road, in the next few years or whatever, your interests will change, but you'll still have at least drawn something, or had at least a starting point in your life where you're like, I found this thing and I started drawing it, and I've been drawing for 5 years now. That may not have happened if you hadn't just been inspired by whatever it was you're inspired by and then just went with it. So I guess that's the moral of my story. I don't really know. I just always think about that moment with that woman and just being so wound up and so angry. I mean, she wasn't outwardly rude to me, but all I could think of was all the kids that she must have yelled at or like told to stop, and it made me really upset, because maybe they've now stopped drawing forever because of it. And that's not what an art teacher's in the world to do. Y'all gotta be more open-minded. And even if you hate anime, well, you probably don't, because you're watching this and it's kind of anime looking, but not everyone who starts with it continues to do it, so don't worry. In a bunch of years from now, I might look back at what I'm doing now and be like, man, glad I stopped doing that, or I doubt I will feel that way, but I will definitely be drawing much differently than I am now, and that's something that you can always count on, no matter who you are. You're going to look back at what you've done now, or what you did, last week or whatever, and you're going to be like, oh man, I'm doing so much better now. This has so many things wrong with it that I wouldn't do again. And like I said in the previous part 1 or part 2, I'm not sure at this point, but like I said before, that's how you learn, that's how you get better, and if you're not making mistakes, then you're not learning. And every picture is going to be full of mistakes, and you just kind of have to be okay with that. And that's easier said than done. Like, there have been times where, because I'm a perfectionist, and that might be evident in how picky I am about things and how many times I've gone over these lines and everything. And that's something that's hard to get out of, and a lot of people are that way, and a lot of people are super hard on themselves. And that doesn't do anything to help to serve you. Like, that doesn't benefit you in any way to have that attitude. And it might be really hard to get out of that thought process, especially if you're a little bit insecure or you're hard on yourself in your day-to-day life, that's going to carry on into your art life, and you're going to be hard on yourself there too, and that's really not going to serve you. So I think that's all I want to say about that. But if you've ever been told that what you make is ugly, or, you know, that you have silly interests, don't listen to that noise. That's like really stupid shit to say. Those kind of people, you know, that's not their business. Whether you're in high school, middle school, college, if people are giving you shit, just don't listen to them, because their opinion doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You know, and it'll still hurt your feelings. You know, people aren't made of metal. But just kind of like don't think about it. I feel like I was very fortunate in my education that I wasn't really given that much shit about what I drew, thankfully, because I'm pretty sensitive to stuff like that. I have had, you know, we've all had our fair share of bad critiques, which I'm definitely going to talk about critiques in length, probably in the next video actually, because that's a good segue, because I'm just about at my limit right now. I try to keep these under 25 minutes. I think my first one was a little bit over, and my second one was about as long as this is now. So I'm going to wrap this one up. But that squeaking, if you heard that, that was a tub being turned on in the bathroom. I have a very small home, so everything's very close to each other, and you can hear everything.